Thank you for viewing the video on facilities as part of the cost of goods program provided by Rondex Pharma. First, the facilities are the cost to operate a facility in one of these locations. So we break them down for the purposes of our study into developed Western countries, which are the United States, Western Europe, and Japan. The developed Asian countries, which would be Taiwan and South Korea, and the developing Asian countries of India and China. Now, these three groups, these three basic geographical areas, the vendors in each of them are in competition with each other, and they recognize the competition from other companies in their space. So they have, over the past several years, very closely adjusted their cost structures so that they are consistent with each other. So that's how things work today. And always keeping an eye on to see if there's any space being developed within these different blocks. But for the past several years, and it looks like for the next several years, this is going to be kind of how one should look at the basic geographic markets. Now, of course, there's quite a difference between different vendors in science. We have found this to be a very powerful way to look at it. Now, we're often asked, how do we know that these are the costs that are experienced by people in these different blocks? Well, first of all, in Rondex, many of us are manufacturers. And so we have direct knowledge of how much things cost to do because we used to do this sort of thing for a living and manage facilities both in the West and in developed Asian countries or developing Asian countries. So we know directly. But also we see from our client the proposals that are given to them. So we have a way to know basically that whether our numbers need to be adjusted or not, and we do periodically adjust them as things shift among these different among the different zones that I described here. So this has been a very useful model for many years, and we expect it to be a good model for a few more years. But like I said, this is something we're always keeping our eye on, and this is something we will provide guidance on in going forward as well. So let's dive into developed Western countries, and what do we mean by that? So you'll see that we have different capacities that are described here. A large process suite is basically a facility that is capable of producing about between a half a metric ton and a ton per batch. This has a certain cost to it. This is not, however, a large API suite where we would expect a higher degree of finish and be more expensive to run because it has far more cross-contamination control and oversight, as shown here. In a developed country, the direct labor cost per technician or operator is about $30 per hour. Direct professional labor cost per day is about $1,000. So what does this mean? This would be, for example, the technician who would be providing in-process control information, or who will be doing release testing, for example, or the person who is overseeing the, let's say, for example, there's a particularly difficult step where it's going to really require a lot of oversight from an environmental engineer or a process engineer. We would account there. Waste costs are often denominated in dollars per 200-liter drum that's disposed of. And for a well-developed process, the wastes are well profiled. That typically runs about $100 per drum. In a lab suite, for example, where there hasn't been a lot of work done to characterize that waste, one can expect that to be as much as $500 per drum. And similarly, that's from a high potency suite, that you would expect that waste to require a great deal more oversight, and so those tend to be more expensive to dispose of. So that also is $500 per drum. by distinction, we also consider the cost from an ion exchange suite. The cost exposed that way is dramatically less because that tends to be material that can be sent away through their plant instead of having to be burned, as these other ones we assume have to be done. So you see, there's a number of different suites that are available here, people to consider. These are all suites that we have experience with, and you will find quite useful in your work. And of course, you can also define your own suite if you want to. So we could just simply hit the add button, and we can name a new one, and we could make that global, or we can make it quite specific to a particular project. You don't have to share that with all your colleagues if that doesn't make sense to do. This is a very powerful place, and this information we provide as part of the subscription, and we keep these up to date. We will adjust these annually, how that would work. So thank you very much for your attention.